Hello and welcome to today's Student CPD session. The focus of today is going to be on building and maintaining positive and professional relationships between yourself and your tutors. An A-level programme is 2 years. That's 2 years of your life that you are going to be working with these members of staff. They are experts in their subject knowledge, in their fields, and it is their duty, their responsibility, and their desire to impart some of that knowledge to you. It very much is about a two-way response, though. The expectation is for all the effort that they're going to put in, it will be met and matched by yourselves. Your studies, although very much are about you and how you are going to develop, understanding your successes and putting the ownership very much on you, it requires a relationship with your tutors that is going to help smooth that journey and hopefully guide you with ease. Now, this is a slide that you won't have seen before because we've never had to use language that might be considered a little bit controversial. But as I was putting this presentation together today, I realised that a lot of the advice that I've been given over the years has come from my family. And so there's a lot of colloquial language, informal or potentially a little bit slang that I'm going to use today. And it might be controversial. I don't suspect that it's too bad, but just want to bear that in mind. So, as we move forward with the different examples and topics we're going to discuss, please, in advance, forgive me for the language I'm going to use to illustrate the points, and if you want to opt out, this would be your opportunity to do so. Okay. The first thing that I would like you to bear in mind is the fact that everybody is a person. Now, that might be stating the obvious, and I hope that it is. I hope that everybody can appreciate that those that we walk on this planet with tend to be people. Unless, of course, we've got robots invented in the time between recording and reviewing this video. But one of the expressions that I was brought up with, and one that I would again refer to the disclaimer, so in advance I apologise, is that, oh my goodness, nobody wipes their arse on sugar bags. So that's the first one. And it appears in a concept of reminding us that we are all people, that everybody has the same or similar experiences, some in more privileged positions than others, but at the end of the day, we are all people. Perhaps a little bit more highbrow, and one that we could trust a little bit further, is to quote Shakespeare in The Merchant of Venice when Shylock says, "If you prick us, do we not bleed?" in his attempt to highlight to everybody else and hopefully the audience that Jewish people are still people, still have emotions and still should be treated with respect and care. He drew upon that image of we all bleed. And I think that's really significant. When you consider the relationships that you have with tutors, of course, there is a degree of respect that is expected. Of course, there is a right way and a wrong way to deal with people in a professional capacity. But what is worth remembering is that even our exec team, the pictures that you can see on screen at the moment, they are people. If you treat them with kindness and respect, you will receive kindness and respect in return. It is very much about remembering that you are all trying to achieve the same goal, and that is your starting point for having a good relationship. They're not your enemy. There are people that are going to help you along your way. And the more that you collaborate and the more that you work with these people, the better it's going to be. The next piece of advice that I would encourage you to engage with is honesty. Admitting when something is hard, admitting when you're finding something a struggle. If you are clear with your tutors about what you are doing and the demands that are on your time, you will get much further. I often have emails from students telling me that they're not coming in for one reason or another, but the emails that I appreciate the most are the ones that are honest with me. Now, the very quick graphic that you see on the screen is just a reminder that this is not what to do. When you're having an issue, when you've got a problem, you need to tell the person that you're dealing with what that is, but you need to do so in a way that is going to reflect how you want to be perceived. If I get a complaint from a student that is aggressive in its nature, is maybe even defensive on their behalf, is full of inaccuracies that I know to be inaccuracies, I have that immediate response that matches what I've been received, because as I've said already, we are simply people. So how about you are much more honest in your approach and quick to be honest? So don't wait a week before admitting you didn't understand an assignment. Wait at the end of a class or the next day and say, you know what, I appreciate that you delivered a difficult concept or idea yesterday. I'm really struggling with that. Could you help me? It's so much better than not turning up to class or sending an email saying that your dog ate the homework. Be honest in the way that you deal with people and you will get so much further. And I believe that that's important for tutors too. One of the things I think I can confidently say is my students know that I will tell them when things are difficult, how things are being changed and why. It helps and it builds a rapport. The next expression, and again, I remember growing up a lot with this. This is something I would have heard from my mother on more than one occasion. And it's advice that has been a part of my entire life and something that I hope is very much a part of my mantra. She would often say to me, you get more with sugar than you do with salt, meaning when you ask politely, when you're sweet like sugar, you're much more likely to get a better response than if you do so with aggression, if you do so with a bitter taste like salt. I just noticed the typo in that one. There we go. See, even I make mistakes. That's one that you could be worth bearing in mind. When you're asking for a deadline, it's better to go in with honesty and integrity, but with manners. When again you think about your tone of voice, the way that you're going to ask for these things. In another video, I mentioned about knowing your audience and said, imagine asking for a favor from different people. How do you adjust the way that you speak to people according to your audience? Think about the way that you can speak to people, and this is going to be one of your tasks that you're going to pause me for in a moment. I would like you to write a series of statements. And again, on one side of your piece of paper, I would like you to write the statements using polite language. Now, this is not your opportunity to be syrup, so not too sweet. You're not going over the top, but you're trying to not persuade, but simply use the positive, proper language that is going to build that relationship with your tutors. And on the flip side, how would you not do it? And this is a useful exercise because it helps to highlight the ways that you can see the difference between the sugar and the salt. Pause me now and then maybe come back in 5 minutes. Another piece of advice to help build upon your relationships with your tutors is to listen and reflect. Now, there is also another video for you to engage with, thinking about your reflections and the way that you respond to different people and how that is an integral part of study. It's definitely going to be a focus for my students in the coming year. When somebody says or asks something of you, it's useful to give yourself the time to fully absorb what is being said and how you're being addressed. So when somebody says, I'm disappointed that you didn't get your coursework in on time, for example, there's the option there for you to immediately respond either defensively or aggressively. But why not repeat back what you've just heard? Because that's an understandable. Let's validate the emotions of the other person. So, okay, yeah, I can understand why you would be disappointed in that. If I was expecting the same thing, I would be disappointed if a deadline wasn't met. You need to acknowledge where you can be right and where you can be wrong. It's useful to use that example as a way to consider moving forward. So if you say, I understand why you would be disappointed, and acknowledge that, Then say, however, there are some extenuating circumstances that you might not be familiar with. Would it be okay for me to explore those with you? Is much more effective than you instantly replying with, but you don't know what I'm going through. You don't know what I have on in my life, which might very well be true, but it's not going to enhance a relationship. It's not going to build on it, because it very quickly becomes about conflict rather than resolution. The next slide is slightly more challenging because respect means different things to different people. Traditionally, and again as part of my upbringing, we would have said, treat others as you would want to be treated. Although sometimes that's not appropriate, sometimes that's not showing respect. So it's very difficult to bear that in mind. You might be comfortable with being spoken to in one fashion that another person doesn't. So when we think about respect, and again, this is going to be another short task, I want you to think about all of the ways which you can show respect. So again, take this opportunity to pause the video for 2 minutes, no more than, and put a question mark in the middle of your paper. What does respect mean to you, and how can you show it? Also, as an extension, think about how you feel respected. How are you able to have that from somebody else? So perhaps use 2 different colours for that would be a really good way to illustrate the point. One of the biggest things that I think will support any relationship is mutual respect. And there is a big problem in which comes first. Is it earned? Is it given? Do you build it over a period of time or not? One of the things that I think is so crucial in respect is differences. Where one person sees one thing, you can respect their opinion or view and have a different one for yourself. The problem here is that you're not always right, and that is a difficult concept to get used to. You have to be able to value somebody else and their views and opinions. Now, the fortunate thing here for you is that all of the teachers in college have gone through a rigorous training program, have qualified in their subject. Most of them have industry experience. So your ability to trust in their abilities is kind of been vetted for you already. The hard work's been taken out, which is why it's slightly more challenging, because tutors will expect that degree of respect to be given. As such, consider how you're going to prove, how are you going to be vetted for your tutors? What can you do to show that you respect the expectations? So if you think about the professional body or industry experience, how would you be able to deliver that same level of professionalism with your tutor so that that mutual respect can flourish? My last piece of advice, and this video I realise will be slightly longer than some others, is to say thank you. It builds on the idea of you getting more with sugar than you do with salt. If you have a look at some of the instances where you have the opportunity to say thank you and show your gratitude, it shows that you don't take things for granted, and that would be incredibly useful for any relationship. If someone makes you a meal at home, do you say thank you? If someone passes you something, do you say thank you? If someone holds a door open for you, do you say thank you? Of course you do. It's natural. It's part of your upbringing and culture. So why does that get left off so frequently? Holding a door open takes very little effort. Trust me, planning a lesson takes so much more. So why not say thank you? In one of the videos I've done in responding to feedback, I refer to one of my students who is by far the best and most reflective and responsive to feedback learners I have ever taught. One of the things he always does without exception is when he receives a piece of marked work, he says thank you. That makes me feel really appreciated as a member of staff. He understands that it's taken me time to mark it, and he then builds on it. That means, and it promotes, whether consciously or not, a culture of wanting to support that student more. The relationship is there, it's strong, it's professional, but it is absolutely built upon an understanding that we are both working for a common goal. There's been a couple of tasks involved in today's session, and I realise that it's a little bit longer, so I'm going to start to wrap it up at this point. But maybe take the opportunity to think about who you are going to be in that professional and positive relationship come September. And make a to-do list, make a to-be list even. What can you do with each of those at the beginning of September that is going to foster and support a positive professional development and relationship for your next academic year? That might be a really good way to make your studies and the difficulty of A-levels slightly more manageable.